Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another extremely long hoof trimming video. Now, bear with me, folks. You're going to want to sit down for this one. You're going to want to pull up a chair, or get under a cover, or sit on the couch, or actually spend some time with this video with me, because I'm going to attempt to do something in this video that I've never attempted before. I've been doing the social media now for close to 18 months, pretty solid. And in this video, I intend on walking you through almost the whole video with hardly any breaks of narration. So, some hooves I'll go through detail, other hooves I won't. But keep track of what we do here, because all of these hooves are coming from the same farm during the same day. Our trimming methods that we use, which is the latest and greatest topic of us hoof trimmers, is what's right and what's wrong. But to really explain it properly, so you can kind of get the idea of how I analyze feet and how I trim feet, is that every cow and every toe and every hoof is unique. And to standardize hoof trimming, you would have to have one cow that made all the milk for the entire world, or resort to robots. While a lot of cows are so different, and so are humans, that you can understand why we cannot standardize hoof trimming. So therefore, I usually try to follow guidelines that are shown to me on these hooves. Every hoof, every toe has a map. And these maps, in turn, tell me exactly where to go, where not to go, where's too far, where I still have more room. And being able to understand these things is helpful. One word I like to use when I'm explaining how far to go is the word pith. Pith is the flaky, white, powdery substance that is shedded off of the bottom of the hooves while we're trimming. Now, pith is found in almost every cow that is trimmed in confinement. So dairies that have freestall barns, tie stall barns. I've had some argue me that they can't find pith in the cows. It's not that they can't, it's that they're just not sure what they're looking at is the difference. So the pith, back to that is the natural hoof that is trying to shed off, but due to the environment, it cannot shed naturally. So deer, antelope, elk, moose, caribou, cloven hoof animals, wild pigs, whatever, even wild horses, we can say, would naturally shed their hooves in the wild, and we're not out there as hoof trimmers taking care of wild animals and shedding and helping them shed hooves. It is just our job as hoof trimmers to remove that hoof that they cannot naturally shed. Now, with that being said, once that is diagnosed and you know what you're looking at and what needs to come off, that shedding will create the perfect hoof. That animal will be back to her as close to normal and as close to natural state as possible. And the argument always presents itself: if us humans have high heels or big work boots or whatever, when do we really feel the best? And the answer to that is when we're barefoot. When we're barefoot and we're able to walk, whether it's smooth concrete, whether it's sand, whether it's grass, whether it's mud. I mean, we kind of think of the gross factor of having dirt in our toes or dirty feet or whatever. But if you actually talk about comfort, that is when we are the most comfortable. Now, it's a close analogy, but cow's hoof capsule is made to walk on the elements, where our soft skin's not necessarily made to walk on stones, unless that is how we are accustomed to, such as probably Native Americans, or a long time ago before modern shoes people would grow calluses on their feet that were extremely thick and could tolerate these elements. So it's not apples to apples anymore, but you can totally see how I'm coming up with the reasoning behind how I trim hooves. Now, there are other thoughts and theories to trimming on where pressure points are in the hooves, what should be removed, what should be done. But if you really look at hooves for what they are, there is a map on every hoof that tells you just how much you can take off, how much to leave, what her normal and what her natural hoof angle is, what her sole thickness is, what her toe length is, what her heel height is. Every foot is individual. And another way I like to explain this is if you were to take my finger and you would measure it, say 2.5 or 3 inches long or whatever, and I measure your finger and I say, well, the average between my finger and your finger is this, so we're going to cut all fingers to that number. Well, or all fingernails to that number. Well, that's not fair. There's different cultures, different races, different ages, different growths, different everything, to where that's not a fair thing to do for any mammal or animal or human or anything. So like I said, each toe is individual, and if somebody tries to standardize hoof trimming, that is absolutely ridiculous as far as I'm concerned. Now let's get back into the chute operation. As you can see in this operation, cows enter the chute very smoothly. There's not a lot of hindrances in the chute. Cows can follow one another, and then these hydraulic latches do a great job at restraining the hooves. One reason that I'm going to say I'm a little partial to the layover style of hoof trimming is that when that animal has its foot latched in there, and as you can see a few times, she's able to not necessarily freely move her hoof or her leg, but she can move it a little bit. And some people say, well, that's dangerous. To the trimmer, mildly, possibly, but to the animal, if it is solid, you start to risk joint issues, muscle issues, and nothing wrong with the other style chutes, but this is one of the reasons I choose the chutes that I use, these layover types, is that they can move to where their knee and their hips and their foot and their ankle have some movement, so they aren't fighting and pulling something too hard against themselves and walking out of my equipment with injury. Not very common, even on the other styles, will there ever be injury, but I feel there's going to be a lot less when that cow actually has a little more range of motion, but not enough to actually create a problem for me. As you can see, Jimmy's back there moving cows up for me, but very calmly. And these cows, the idea is that cows will follow cows. I had a conversation with another hoof trimmer the other day, and when you think about hoof trimming as a whole, we are mostly 100 to 300 pound humans moving cattle, trying to get them in a position to where we can successfully trim their hooves to better their life. And when you actually start talking about physics, and you start to think, well, here's a domesticated animal with an IQ barely above plant life, and they're 1,500 pounds, versus us humans, which are highly intelligent people that weigh 5 times or more or less than these animals. If these animals truly want to, or even if they don't want to, they could take a real advantage of us and hurt us, or possibly even worse. So when it comes down to animal handling and shuffling, it's usually the best idea that we make it the cow's idea. The cow is willing to follow another cow. Cows are herding animals. You've probably heard the word herding or herd of cows. Cows stick together. Cows walk together. And you'll notice throughout this video certain spots where when I let a cow out, she is following the cow in front of her, and that cow that comes into the chute is also being followed by another cow behind her. Now, that is just for the simple sake to make it the cow's idea. It's exactly what I want her to do, but rather than me being the guy that's saying, okay, I'm going to stop all process, now I need you to walk up there, don't fight me. Instead, I'm saying, okay, chase this cow out of the chute and try to get away, and I'll just conveniently stop you with a hydraulic cylinder and a remote control. So as you can see, that cow left, and there's another cow coming in here. She's like, okay, that cow just went through, so I can. Well, nope, I've got you. So that's where this is a very convenient way for me to make my life less stressful, and in turn puts less stress on for the cows. Coffee break, that's a good idea. I'll take one right now while I'm narrating this as well. So one thing you can see here is we do carry an array of knives. This knife I picked for the simple reason that you can see this rock in this hoof. I wanted to be able to make sure that I could get that rock out without using one of my extremely sharp knives. We try to keep at least a few dull ones around, or a few knives that we're not going to use for anything else than picking pieces of metal or stone or whatever, cleaning off hooves. Because when it comes time to do therapeutic work on hooves, a sharp knife is always a must. You've probably heard in other professions too, a dull knife is more dangerous than a sharp knife. That is extremely true in hoof trimming. If you watch other hoof trimmers, it seems as though some of their blades are exceptionally dull, and they spend a lot of time really hitting on the hooves harder than they need to. You can see here, even though I'm moving at a pretty good clip, you can still see I'm not smashing the grinder, and I'm more or less painting with it, or just letting the grinder do the work. Your knives need to be sharp enough to allow the grinder to do the work. That's key, number one. And you can see I'm not going to touch that one toe very much on that hoof for the simple sake it was fine. Now here is a one that was part of this day, but we had also made a video. I didn't do much voiceover on it initially, but in this video you can clearly see that she's got an ulcer about the size of a golf ball that is protruding out of this hoof. Now, in 20 years, I'm still at the point where I have mixed emotions on the proper way I feel to treat these type of ulcers. This ulcer is big enough that it's going to need a block to make sure that we have that ulcer off the ground when she goes to walk. But the debate with these is, do we cut the ulcer off and heal the root of the lesion, heal the wound, or do we try to heal that ulcer, shrink it down, and kind of let nature take its course on healing it from the position it's at now? I've had good luck doing it both ways. One way is a little bloodier than the other. But with that being said, I try to refrain, especially on animals that have the potential to heal, from cutting them off. Now, if they are going to be stepping straight onto that lesion and I can't get the weight off it, or the environment doesn't allow for an animal to heal as well, it's definitely not a question. We're just going to do everything we can, make that animal well in the position she is. But if she is going to be in a cleaner environment such as this one, we will make sure that we address that lesion, and the farmer here is pretty good at making sure she's addressing lesions afterwards as well. Now, there is some overgrowth here, and there is a few reasons for this overgrowth. I'm sure the farmer would like to blame me for a couple of those, because I'm probably about a month late to this job. But with that being said, ultimately the cows are the farmer's cows, but the farmer says, well, you better figure it out because we're waiting for you. So it kind of was a weird backwards pressure from the farmer to get me in there. But what I will tell you, and this has become an even more serious issue than I thought it ever could have been, but there is an excessive amount, or there's an extreme lack of hoof trimmers. So if any of you think you may or may not want to be a hoof trimmer but want to learn a little more about it, I would recommend the Midwestern Hoof Trimmers online course. That'll give you kind of an overview of the whole thing with cows' hooves and structure and anatomy and lesion healing and some of that sort of stuff. But there is room in the industry for more hoof trimmers at this point. We are a good group of people. We all pretty much act as colleagues in a hidden way sometimes, but very, very few of us do not like each other. We have a good community of guys that do it. Now, with that being said, my crew alone, we trim close to 30,000 animals a year, and if you do the math, that's close to 120,000 hooves. And if you times that by 4 into toes, what's that? That's a lot. 480,000 toes that we will trim one at a time. So, with that being said, there's still a lot more to do, and we can't do it. This is a prime example of where you can see the natural sole in the bottom and where we're just taking that excessive extra growth off to promote her back to her natural sole thickness. Like I said, there is a map on every one of these cows, and it's easy to read if you know what you're looking for. There was another good example where she shook a little bit there in the chute, and she's fine. She's not. If anything, I would relate it to a tickle or an unnecessary excitement. So the way I like to tell people this is it's not hurting the animal, but if you had somebody grab both of your hands and both of your feet and just hold on to them, regardless, it's not going to hurt you, but if they just held on to them, your natural instinct is to move. It's not just to lay still, be patient for 4 minutes. At some point in time, you're going to get bored and think you're going to try to move because you maybe forgot that even you're being held. And that's exactly what's going on. It's a natural response, human, cow, whatever. But as for people ask me, does this process hurt? Absolutely not. It does not hurt. There's nothing to hurt about it. Even though we find these lesions, if you think of what the original pain of the lesion is with her body weight on that lesion pushing into the ground, that's going to hurt a lot more than anything I'm going to do on this unit. The way I like to look at it is if you think of, say, a gallon of milk. A gallon of milk weighs 8 pounds. A cow weighs 1,500 pounds. If you figure how many gallons of milk could a very strong man lift, 10 gallons would be 80 pounds. 20 gallons would be 160 pounds. 20 gallons would be 160 pounds. If I could just imagine lifting more than 20 gallons of milk at one time, that would probably be about the maximum amount of pressure that I could probably put on this cow's hoof. And when she's walking, she's going to be putting 1,500 pounds of pressure on that hoof. Granted, when she's standing, that weight's dispersed, but when she's walking, there's sometimes 1 or 2 feet in the air at sometimes, and she can definitely have a lot more pressure on these hooves. Even with this pulling of the hoof knife, I can't pull more than maybe 200 pounds. It's minimal compared. If there was pain there, it'd be because of just natural responses. Now, sometimes we get into this problem right here. It's a very sensitive problem. It's what's called toe necrosis. Toe necrosis is probably the hardest problem to heal out of all the hoof trimming problems, for the simple reason that it is at the point of the toe where it flexes and at the tip of the bone where it can actually move within the capsule a little bit. It's meant to do that. It's meant to be able to shift a little bit. But with that being said, if it does get infected and it is open at the tip of the toe all the way to the bone, the chances of bacteria getting in there and not being able to get out is very, very good, because all they do is push into the ground with every step. Now, like any other hoof, the best option we have is to simply clean it out to the best of our ability, block the good toe to get the bad toe off the ground to eliminate that weight, and then open up the front of this foot as far as we dare to be able to promote the healing. Now, because that video has stopped, I have no idea why it stopped, but that was the end of it. I'm guessing one of two things. Number one, this new camera that I'm using that's giving you this point of view is battery's dead, or B, it got too gnarly for me to put onto social media. With that being said, we're going to take a look at this cow. This cow is quite a project animal. She came in with severe dermatitis on these front feet to where you could actually see it wore off the front of her toe and kept the back of her toe, because what she would have done was she would have posted her toe straight down to the ground so that she could alleviate any weight and pressure coming onto the back of her heel because of this dermatitis issue and what looks to be a sole ulcer as well. So when she did that, she wore off the front of her toes. And one thing that's interesting, and you'll notice once we get into trimming her with the grinder, is that it almost makes it look like I'm making her foot bigger when I trim her. It kind of looks like a short, stumpy little foot right now. When I trim her, I will change the angle of those heels down to her toe, and it'll actually make her foot look bigger when I'm finished. Which, as soon as the nerve endings are healed by whatever we can spray or wrap on these hooves onto this dermatitis lesion, she will start to put weight back onto that foot and in turn be able to wear. When I say wear, I mean shed and naturally grow that hoof the way it should be because of proper weight disbursement. But this was probably the worst foot of the day on that farm. That day we trimmed just over 70 cows, and there was only probably 2 or 3, this being one of them, that were notably sore to the point where it took a little while to make sure I felt confident that she was going to heal. Another question on that topic, or another comment I should say on that topic, is when people watch a lot of my videos, or when you guys watch any videos, and you say, well, man, is that going to heal? I'd like to see a recheck. Or when do you look at this animal again? When will she have a revisit? Most of the time, and I'm going to speak for a lot of other trimmers, but I'm going to speak blatantly, when we do these hooves like this, one of two things happen. Either, number one, she gets better and doesn't create any more issues. She does a good job until this herd's due for another routine style trim. Or B, this animal is one of the worst animals in the farm for whatever reason, whether it's because of the lameness, because of her lack of being able to breed or milk, or whatever the situation is. This lameness could have caused many other issues, or maybe some of these other issues constituted to the lameness. I mean, if she got sick and had some metabolic problems that could have led to lameness, there's 101 different reasons, but there's a chance she does not exist in the herd after a while. She's going to get a career change. Now, nothing wrong with that. It's just business. It's the way it works. But every time I get a chance to do a recheck, I will do a recheck for you guys, because I know you guys like to see some of the healing process where that gives you some feelings of gratification. And but very, very rarely do we need to see an animal twice. A lot of things we're doing here is simply about weight distribution. It'd be kind of like saying you went in to fix a broken leg. They put you on crutches, and after you were done being on the crutches and your leg healed, you had to go back in and get your broken leg fixed again. Or you had to get usually once it's done, it's done. And one time's usually enough for most hoof ailments. Or B, like I said, if it's that bad, there's a solid chance that the farmer's not going to monkey around with the animal much longer. We had an interesting comment on a video the other day that says these animals that the lady was very understanding, but a little uneducated. She says these animals that are sore, not profitable, or they're too lame to be an asset to these dairy farms. She's a very good advocate for farmers and beef farmers and dairy farmers alike. But can these animals then go to sanctuaries so they can live out the rest of their lives? That's a yes and no answer, folks. If you really think about the numbers, there's one meat packing plant here that's right next to my home, or it's a county over from my home, and they process close to 1,800 head of animals daily. And if you think about who and where does the money come from to house 1,800 animals alone daily at a rescue style environment, that's not practical, it's not economical. And face it, folks, beef does need to come from somewhere. Now, most of the beef that you will buy in commercial stores does come from dairy animals, usually perfectly healthy, no problems, whatever dairy animals. Animals that go in with any kind of lameness or whatever else usually get put into some sort of dog food or animal food with that. But animals that are real good shape, meant to be processed for beef, they will be put through the same system. But usually those animals, they're culled, is what the word is, C-U-L-L-E-D. And culled means that they're removed from the herd for one reason or another. Reproduction and milk, or quality of milk, is usually the number one reasons for dairy, number 1, 2, or 3 reasons for dairy animals to be culled. But good information there for you. As you can see, right now we're working on a hairy wart, and that wart is mighty tender. There is a lot of nerve endings, but this process obviously is just a minute or less to be able to start the healing process of that lesion. This animal may have been walking around for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks with that lesion on her foot, maybe even less, maybe a day. It's hard to say, but whatever we do here just speeds up that process, where this animal within 2 days is going to be free of pain and walking fine. So that's one thing I like to remind the viewers is, hey, we're not putting animals in pain. We are taking them out of pain. Always a lot of questions, does this hurt? And it absolutely does not. It's just like trimming your toenails or trimming your fingernails. There's enough area that you can go. There's a stopping point, and you know where it's at. You know, you're not going to intentionally cut your fingernails too close, just as I'm not going to intentionally cut this cow's toenails too close. Now, trimming 30,000 cows a year, you say, well, geez, are you Mr. Perfect, or do you make mistakes? Well, face it, we all make mistakes. No matter what we do, we make mistakes, but we own them. So if I were to cut a cow's toenail too close, I would definitely be putting a block on, explaining to the farmer, hey, when I trimmed this animal, I got her just a little too close. I put a block on her, she'll be fine, she'll heal, there's nothing to worry about. I wrapped it up, we put iodine on it, she'll be okay. But you gotta own it. That's the number one thing when it comes to hoof trimming. Now, out of 30,000 a year, of course we have a few that we get too close. But when I say a few, I literally mean a few. You would think that number could be higher, but there's probably less than even a couple handfuls that are like that. Now, I'm not sure what you guys think at this point. If you've been with me so far, we're almost at the half-hour mark through this video. And as you can see, we have done quite a few cows, fixed quite a few feet, trimmed quite a few as well. And if you have questions at the end, be sure to either personally message me, or you can put them in the comments too, and you'll get everybody's answer. But if you're looking for a specific answer and you want my answer alone, and not you're sure I'm the one that gets it, be fine if you send a message. That's no problem. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may or may not have, or hear your comments or whatever. But I'm hoping you're enjoying this style of content. Now, I'm not sure how much more of this style I'll do. It's going to be based upon how much you guys like it, how much feedback we get. See if there's any virality to doing content like this. But this is just the same way you're doing it, in a point of view way right now. The camera for all these hooves is actually connected to the brim of a baseball cap, so it's right in front of my nose, just the way I'm looking at a foot. So if you wanted to put yourself in the position of how I'm working, this is exactly how I'm working. So this hole we're digging out right now, one time people ask me, they say, how do you know when to stop? And the simple answer to that is, if there is loose horn or hoof or sole or whatever you want to call it, if there's loose hoof or sole or horn, it needs to come off. It needs to be fully removed so that no debris, whether it's sticks or stones or rocks, or in this case there's some sand on the farm, we don't want those little sand grains and granules getting underneath that hoof onto the softer stuff and creating ulcers. So you got to make sure that all separation's removed. And once you've determined the separation's removed, usually you're not going to want to go any farther, because the good growing hoof, also known as corium, will be very tender and can bleed if irritated. Now, fortunately, cows are probably the best and strongest and easily healed hooved animals I can probably think of. I mean, humans by far harder to heal problems than cows are, especially if you consider the environments. I mean, cows, their hoof capsule is made to withstand the elements. It's made to withstand cold temperatures, hot temperatures, slippery temperatures, manure, dirt, bugs, chemicals, everything. It's made to be a barrier. But when there is a hole inside that capsule that leads to a bigger problem, such as a white line abscess or a sole ulcer, the cow is resilient at growing hoof, and she knows that she needs to grow hoof to heal herself. And so the body takes over and just grows hoof at a much more rapider, I don't know what the right word is, rate, to where that animal can heal very, very, very quickly. Now, with that also being said, cows have an extremely high pain tolerance. And some people say it's not a pain tolerance, it's a natural instinct for predatorial animals. But their pain tolerance has to be extremely high, because I've seen extremely calm cows in not a stressed or environment that have had some major issues, from broken bones to missing appendages to literally gashes on these animals, and they show no sign of pain. Now, you have to say there is some pain relation, but the sensory aspect of that, and the nerves of the animal, or whatever brain function there is in these cows, is definitely much more tolerable to pain than the humans are. So a lot of people are trying to contrast and compare humans to cows with pain tolerances. No, if I get a paper cut, my finger hurts and I'm telling everybody about it. A cow, no, not so much. But the person that did say that they are predatorial animals and they don't show pain is also right. Back when cows or animals of any species would run the wild, if they were preyed on by another animal, the whole idea is that they do not show weakness, they do not show pain, they do not show that they're injured or slow or hurt, because if they do that, then they have been made themselves a target. And so that's a natural instinct of an animal that I like to explain. This was a unique toe. Nothing too awful bad with it, but she had a crack that ran all the way up the front side of her hoof. In the fancy hoof trimming world, we call that the dorsal wall on the front of that toe. Right now we're just working on the sole. But once you look back, and there is some knife work to be found in this hoof, but that we're going to be working on her dorsal wall. That's a word we haven't used very much in our videos, for the simple sake that a lot of you, I don't expect you guys to know all the terms of us hoof trimmers. I try to teach or explain things in a 6th grade style wording and level. Not saying you guys have 6th grade educations, it's just I want everybody to be able to understand relatively equally. Now, this wooden block that we're putting the glue on, that is simply a crutch. We're putting that on the good toe. We put that on the good toe so when she plants her foot on the ground, that she'll put all her weight on that wood block and not on the opposite injured toe. So give me a second here and we'll go around to this animal's dorsal wall, and you'll be able to see this lesion, which actually, surprisingly, at the end, I'm going to be a spoiler here, heals out relatively well. I was thinking we were going to have a lot more dramatic issue with this, but one thing that I always look for, and maybe you guys have noticed if you've watched many hoof trimming videos, is that if there is an excessive amount of swelling, usually there's going to be quite a big problem. But as you can see, there's not a lot of swelling around the top of that toe, and maybe once I back off a little bit, you can see more of the ankle area right there. There's not a whole lot of swelling. And with that being said, I could have said it wasn't going to be bad, which it wasn't. But based upon the location, I said there's no way that hole's going somewhere and it's not completely nasty. Come to find out, there's just a little tiny spot that's still irritating the corium through that dorsal wall, and we'll simply just peel off any of this pinching horn that's around it and then try to help heal the lesion. Obviously, I cannot just put good hoof back on an animal, but I do have the power to promote the healing, especially by relieving the weight with that block off that toe. Now, some hoof trimmers don't even use a block. They'll simply just leave more hoof on the opposite side of the toe. The problem with that is the idea is that block can wear down as fast as hoof, or maybe equally as fast as hoof, and actually be gone, or the block can break off and be back to her normal hoof. If it was regular hoof, she would probably end up putting too much pressure on the bone for over an extended amount of time and create another problem on the opposite toe. It is a gamble. Sometimes what is right, what is wrong. But anytime any hoof trimmer is doing something like this for a hoof, it is for the best interest of the animal. And at this point, it's at our discretion what that is, based upon the environment, based upon the animal, the point of life of the animal. There are so many decisions to be made, because as I've said earlier in the video as well, these animals are part of a business. We do everything we can to help these animals, from either a dairy standpoint, where we're focused on milk and reproduction, or even from a beef standpoint, when we're focused on locomotion and body scoring and body health, and we like to use the word flesh in the hoof trimming word. Make sure they're good and fleshy. Because face it, if just like humans, we can correlate this to humans. If humans aren't feeling good or can't walk very well, the chances of us going up to the buffet and filling our plate, coming back and eating it, being happy is not very good. But if we can walk well, then we're golden. We're going to make 1 or 2 trips, and we're going to utilize these calories. We're going to exercise, do sports, run, jog, whatever. As long as we're good on our feet, we're more productive in the end. So same theory with cows. Now, one thing you just saw me do was switch grinder blades. That's one way of me getting sharp blades back on my grinder. Like I said, there's some sand with these hooves, so the sand will eat at these inserts on my blades very, very quickly and dull them very, very quickly. So constantly we're always changing and sharpening blades. I have about 8 or 10 of these discs, so at any given time, if I need to have sharp blades, we'll put them right on, because there's no amount of elbow grease that's worth bothering my wrists and whatever else. Because face it, after doing this 20 years, I'm pretty much guaranteed to have carpal tunnel. It's just a matter of when, but I'm trying to prolong it by doing things smart, like having sharp blades. Now, we are officially 40 minutes into this video. Folks, if you've lasted this long through the video, I truly thank you. It's one of the things I wanted to try with doing a full half an hour plus long voiceover, just to see if it was possible, and try to expose a little bit of what was on my mind and get into a comfortable position to talk about it. When we're doing the short clips or the short videos, sometimes there's not enough time to say everything that needs to be said, and maybe there even isn't in this on certain feet. But like I said, these are all animals from the same farm, same setup. Most of the time I'm going to turn the camera on when I feel there's something to record, whether it's a long toe or a problem. Those are the things that people like to watch. For some reason, maggots and pus seem to be the number 1 and 2 things you folks like to watch. But I also like to show you even the simpler fixes and the non-problematic cows, just the normal routine hoof trims. Now, as you can see, I've never really showed you how I put all this stuff together. There's very minimal editing in this video, so I do certain things here that maybe you didn't understand before. What I'm doing with the torch is simply drying any humidity or slight dirt debris that may have been on that good, clean, dry toe. Because if you guys have ever painted or ever glued something before, glue or paint or whatever you're trying to use is only as good as what you're putting it on. So you want it dry, you want it clean, you don't want humidity or oils or anything else on what you're trying to get the glue to adhere to. Just a little common sense there. We do use the Hoof Tight glue. It is very consistent for me, and it has a proper setting time. It sets in about 2 minutes. They recommend 4, but I'm usually pushing off with 2. But as you can see, this is one benefit of a style unit like I use, where I can have both back feet up in the air to let those blocks dry, rather than having to pick each foot up individually and wait twice as long. Now with that, what do we have there? A couple sole ulcers on this one. So I'm going to want to find a pretty sharp knife just so I'm able to clean out those lesions as good as I can. And then we'll usually wrap it with a little Wonder Sauce and the pink spray, which is a new product we're using. And hopefully soon I'll be able to tell you a little bit more about that product. Right now we're just using kind of like antiseptic style spray just to clean off the hoof. And then if there was any bleeding, we try to just make sure. Right now I'm not necessarily trying to clean or stop the bleeding. I'm trying to see if I've got all the loose horn. That's one little misconception some have. They said, well, why are you covering it? Why you keep doing that? And it's like, because I need to see if there's a crack there. Because if there's a crack there, that needs to be dealt with. But as soon as I diagnose that, we'll get the salicylic acid on and wrap it with duct tape. I've been using duct tape solid now for about 2 years. I started with duct tape 20 years ago, then I switched to cohesive wrap for about 15 years or 16 years, and then I switched back to duct tape. Nothing wrong with the cohesive wraps, except for sometimes they don't come off on their own, and they do end up constricting over time. Where duct tape, I've never had that problem. I've had mixed reviews on the ease of cutting the duct tape off, but I haven't had anybody that said it was the wrong way of doing it after they've done it. So some people like it better, some people like it less. But as a whole, it's working for me, it's working for the cows, and it's working for most of our clients. Now, we're getting towards the end of this video. The video will last probably another 4 minutes, but I appreciate everybody that's been on this video and stayed with me this long. I hope you learned something through this video. I hope I spent a little more time elaborating. And if, like I said, you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments, and or you can simply send me a message. I do have Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp. I am also on TikTok, YouTube, if those are places that you'd rather ask questions. But let me know what you think. This is something new I'm trying, and I want to know what you think of these long videos. And I plan on doing some more of these, but let's get the feedback and enjoy the rest of this video, and have a wonderful day.